Don't see Jeff logged in yet.
Yeah, so he might have the wrong information. I'm going to text him the Zoom address here.
Okay. We'll wait for
And
Jeff.
you said we were per the governor, not till what date? 26th for meetings?
I'll mention it again today during our comments from the mayor, but it's actually now extended to April 16th.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The suspension of in-person meetings.
For government employees, right? Okay.
Yeah, well, for the open meetings law, we don't have to, we're not required to do in-person meetings under the open meetings law or to allow the public to come in. Yep.
All right.
Looks like we have Jeff coming in, but I still don't see. Sorry, we have Jeff Lehman, not Jeff Russell. I should be clear about that. Brett, Jeff Russell is joining us right now, so I don't know.
Okay.
You want to give him a minute, then he can go ahead and start.
Sure.
Let me move I gotta put my thing up. Go ahead, just go. My computer's too low. I'm gonna have a stiff neck by the end of the night. So I didn't feel like being in the basement today.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
For the day.
It's too, I don't know, it's too nice out. So I want to be in my
How was your run?
run was beautiful. How'd you know I ran?
Because you would never, ever give up the opportunity to run on a day like this.
Good point. I thought maybe you saw me out there running around.
Nope. I just know how much you like to be outside. So on a day like this, because if you run in crap, I know you ran outside today.
Oh, yeah. I did the JCC run today. So
Oh, yeah.
went through the trails and then I went through the campus and it was nice.
Hopefully road races will be out again.
I know.
All right, Brent, you want to start on behalf of the Public Safety Committee?
Sure. Okay. We're having a special meeting here to present the police reform and reinvention plan that we're working on. Gosh, how long's it been? 6 months now? It's been quite a while since we got the order from the governor. We've had regular meetings with our committee. We've had numerous stakeholders meetings with different groups of people throughout the city of Jamestown. And then more meetings after that with our committee. So I'd just like to give a shout out to everybody who spent a lot of time on this, including all the members of the Public Safety Committee, Jeff Russell, Tamu Graham Reinhardt, and Vicki James, who's not a member of Public Safety, but she absolutely spent a lot of time and had a lot of input into this. Also, Chief Jackson and Captain Forster were very involved, as well as the Executive Assistant, Zach Alch. Spent countless times. We're going to be seeing today, presenting a plan. So before we get started on that, I just wondered if we'd had any more public input on the plan. Jennifer?
I didn't receive any comments in the clerk email or in
Or
the.
Zach, did anything come through the form?
We didn't receive any additional.
Okay, no additional comments. All right. Very good. All right. So we'll get started with the PowerPoint presentation and then open it up to questions of the council members. The first 6 slides will be presented by Councilman Russell.
All right. Once again, I'll just add what Councilman Sheldon said, just thanking everyone that was involved in this. We spent a lot of time on this, meeting weekly for several months. As most of you know, This was a result of a executive order by the governor, Executive Order 203. This took place after the in custody death of George Floyd by Minneapolis Police Department. Many cities and states started to look at policing after that incident. Governor Cuomo issued this executive order, basically mandating that every single police department in the state of New York take a look at what they're doing. He didn't give exact orders of what to do, but he kind of gave a loose framework of some things that we needed to look at. There was one department that was exempt from participating in this. That was the New York State Police, the troopers. I'm still not sure why they were exempt from that. I've been asking some questions as to why they would be exempt from the executive order by the governor. I have not received an answer for that yet. So once again, this is a PowerPoint slide. It's part of the bigger document that Mr. Sheldon was talking about, the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative that can be found on the city website. So we'll start with New York State Executive Order 203 requires that the police chief and city council engage in stakeholders in a public and open review of policing strategies and tools, including use of force, implicit bias, and de-escalation aimed at addressing the damaging effects of systemic racism in the United States on police community partnerships that are so critical to preserving and enhancing public safety in a diverse community. Executive Order 203 requires the police chief and members of the city council to incorporate public input into a draft reform plan, present this plan to the public for comments, revise accordingly, and then present the plan to city council for review and adoption prior to April 1st, 2020. So this plan is being presented to you now. It will be voted on a week from tonight on our next voting session. And then from there, it goes to be submitted to Albany. If this is not done, the governor has made it clear that there's a possibility that the city could not receive funding. So it's imperative that we look at what we're doing and possibly make changes to our policing. All right, so Zach, if I can have the next slide. All right, there were some questions in the public, and I understand this is kind of confusing. People wanted to know exactly how is the Jamestown Police Department organized as far as rank and departments. There is a structure in the police department. It's almost kind of a hierarchy. Some people refer to it as like a paramilitary type organization as far as how it's set up. Obviously, at the top is the chief of police, which is Chief Jackson. From there, it branches off to the operations division. That's going to be, and then on the other side is your administrative support and services division. The operation division, it doesn't state on here, but that's going to be Captain Forrester is going to be in charge of that. And the administrative support and service division is Captain Samuelson. The operations division consists of your patrol section, which is your uniform patrol officers. It doesn't state it on here, but that's further going to be broken down into officers of rank. You're going to have your lieutenants. Below them would be sergeants, and then below them would be patrol officers. The special operations section, and I'm sorry, let me back up. The patrol section is further broke down into 3 shifts. First platoon, second platoon, and third platoon. The first platoon is your day shift officers that work from 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And your second platoon is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And your third platoon is 11 at night till 7 in the morning. Also part of this patrol section is the DWI unit who works overnight. And then also your K9 unit, the K9 and the K9 officer. Below that, you have your special operations section. That's going to consist of your SWAT team, the crisis resolution team that would be utilized in like hostage situations or hostage negotiations, despondent people, suicidal people. Below that, you have your honor guard, your color guard that you'll see in funerals or parades. And then also, since I've retired, they've added a drone team. I know there are some people that are certified drone pilots. Below that, you have your operational administration section, and that's your animal control officer, the crossing guards, and your community resource officer. On the administrative support and services side, you have your investigative section. That's going to be your detectives, detective bureau, drug enforcement officers, and below that is the administrative services and support staff. That's going to consist of your civilians, court building security, jail management, records division, and information technology. Excuse me. Next slide, Zach. We did set up a series of stakeholder meetings. They consisted of the Hispanic Latino community, the faith-based community, Jamestown Public School teachers, staff, Jamestown Public students, and African American community, not-for-profits, local businesses, police department, fire department, and district attorney, ward residents, and senior citizens, and also probation. Excuse me, I have some seasonal allergies going on. We did have a series of stakeholder meetings that we met with all of these groups over a series of months, and basically got their input through a questionnaire that was set up. It was put on the city website, and they could go through and answer a series of questions and then be put into the stakeholder groups that they felt comfortable with. And then we had meetings from there. The final slide, note that the goals and objectives laid out in this plan will be monitored and potentially changed going forward. The City of Jamestown, Jamestown Police Department, and the City Council all realize that it is imperative to update the council process of reform and change in the police department. This will be done on a quarterly basis going forward. So this isn't going to stop after this document. Excuse me. We're going to continue to meet and have conversations about these topics. So, is there another one for me, or?
I know the next 7 slides will be presented by Councilwoman Graham Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Thanks everyone for tuning in or watching. And again, I just want to reiterate my thanks to everyone who participated. This was no easy task to do via Zoom, but we put together a document that we felt we could share with the public and send to the governor's office. Just to support what Jeff just said, this document is just goals and objectives. We didn't go to the granular level of action statements and metrics, basically because there were so many other things and people that needed to be brought to the table to have some of these conversations. And it was not going to be feasible during this time. And so as we begin to lay out each of these goals and objectives, please recognize that this is more of a macro level view. This is not specific, probably not as specific as some people would like to see, but just recognize that, like Councilman Russell said, we are going to continue working with this document. So Zach, if you would like to go to the next one. So if you look at the actual draft, we we determined a couple of different categories that we believe that the stakeholder group shared with us. One thing I do wish to say about the stakeholder groups that we met with is, by and large, the stakeholder groups that we met with had very favorable things to say about our police department. And so it's important to remember that what we're seeing on the national stage in some cities doesn't necessarily reflect Jamestown, the city of Jamestown. We all have room to improve. And so this has been a good exercise in just looking at how the city of Jamestown Police Department has conducted business. However, I would say that by and large, most people from the community felt very comfortable with the law enforcement. One of the areas, maybe the first area that we thought about, was recruitment and how to effectively increase the presence of people of color, minorities within law enforcement. And so we developed just a couple of objectives that, working with the chief and his staff, could possibly be looked at over the next 3 to 6 months or 12 months. We recognize that going into the schools and developing partnerships with the schools to discuss with students careers in law enforcement might be something that they need to look into with regard to either attending college nights, doing guest speaking in certain classes, et cetera. Just a more targeted, intentional presence in the schools, reaching out to students. We would like to develop at some point a scholarship or tuition assistance program to attend the police academy. It does cost money to attend the police academy. And so we want to make sure that it's not cost prohibitive for students of color or other minority students, candidates who may wish to enter law enforcement, but can't do so as a result of the inability to afford the tuition. So we are exploring the possibility of putting something like that together. And also making sure that the public understands what the requirements are for entering the police department. There is an age limit, bottom and top, but also there are some other things that law enforcement reviews prior to someone being admitted into the police academy. There are background checks and other things that need to be taken into consideration. So in addition to an assessment, there are a lot of things that people need to recognize that need to be done when they're looking at a career in law enforcement. And some of the things are state level mandates that are beyond the control of JPD. So it's important that people understand what those requirements are. Next one. So another thing that was important in the document that was sent down from the governor's office is to look at current policies that we have on the books. So at this point in time, we are discussing establishing a committee to strategically look at some of the policies that are on the books that kind of result in interaction with the community. But also the same committee will be looking at assisting the Public Safety Committee with implementation of this collaborative plan. It is unrealistic to think that the 6 of us or the 8 of us who are on this committee could possibly implement everything that we intend to do. And so we will eventually be looking for members of the community to help us begin to implement several of the ideas laid forth in this document. So we just want to make sure that everyone knows that the document is not finished. And as it has been said, we're going to continue to update it, but we will be looking at expanding the committee to begin to look at not only policies, but actual implementation of the plan. And that's just the same thing, yeah. So we hired a community relations officer back in January. We created the JPD created a community relations program. The community relations officer, Reinhardt, just started, and due to COVID, it's probably hard to do a lot of outreach at this point in time. But they have, the police department has attempted to increase visibility of the police department. Some of you recognize that they do post on their Facebook page. They've been bringing the Comfort Dog Hope to various different schools. They've driven by for birthday parties, et cetera, for children who haven't been able to enjoy their birthdays. The chief has indicated that we've significantly increased the presence of beat cops getting out of the car, interacting with the community, interacting with businesses. And that actually happened prior to us hiring Officer Reinhardt as the community relations officer. So the chief has been very intentional about making sure that the officers are getting to know the community. And another objective, which I believe hopefully will take off and we'll see a lot of support from, is a revival of the neighborhood watch programs throughout the city. There are some neighborhood watch groups that are working very well and some that have seemed to have kind of die off. But that the goal of Officer Reinhardt is to revive some of those, revive as many as those that he can, help create new ones so that we as citizens also can help keep our city safe and welcoming to our residents and people who visit. Another area that the law enforcement has decided to really spend some time is in the education and mentoring. They have started small right now and just looking at developing mentoring programs between the youth and police to foster partnerships and trusting relationships, recognizing that some students may come into contact with law enforcement that may not be in a positive light. This is an intentional way that law enforcement can show children that they are helpers, that like we've known about ever since we were in elementary school, and that that they can trust law enforcement officers. And so they're working on a mentoring program to build those relationships with students, and hopefully that will be successful. It's starting very small. If we want specific information, we'll get that from the chief when that's ready to get started. And he is also working to recruit officers and mentees for participation in the program. So hopefully that will be a productive way to interact with the youth in the area. Partnerships. The big goal, the big goal is to explore partnerships with local not-for-profits and businesses to enhance collaboration with JPD. I want to really stress this, even though there isn't a lot of information here. Some of the things that were suggested to the Public Safety Committee by stakeholder groups really require that this be a collaborative, just like the document says. While we intend to create a committee to continue to implement several of these agenda items that we have, it's also has to be recognized that we also need the help from the community, whether that is from people with levels of expertise who can help us work on certain areas such as either mentoring or mental health, but also the fact that some of these initiatives will require funding, and we will need to work with partnerships in other areas to secure ways to really move the agenda forward. I would think that the partnerships would be very important because we are not all experts in all of these areas, and we will need experts and people to somehow, in some areas, help us drive some of these initiatives because we just don't have the human resources to do it as a small committee. So we will be reaching out to experts in the area to assist us with some of these initiatives that we're hoping to do. Is that all for me? Or one more? That's Brent.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But just to kind of dovetail on the partnerships funding, definitely is something that we need to look into. As all the council people know, we're at our constitutional tax limit. So funding is very limited trying to implement some of these programs. So we'll be exploring funding through for these state and federal mandates. Hopefully the state and federal government will help pay for some of these, but also looking at grants that might be out there, and working with some of the community foundations. They've been helpful in the past to purchase different equipment for the police department. I think that's something that we need to look into again. And also collaborating with our community partners to help develop other financial resources, to supplement programming, equipment cost, and training, because we're definitely going to need some more training. There's nothing mandated, but implicit bias training is something that the committee feel very strongly about having. all the officers go through that, and it's even recommended that all city employees go through implicit bias training. So we'll definitely need some funding for that. There's definitely overtime costs associated with the trainings. Okay. Next slide. Okay. A big concern we had from a number of people was the mental health response by the police department. All the officers go through crisis training when they're going through the academy, and a lot of that. Let's see, where did that go? Well, I don't have that in front of me. A lot of that was by experts that developed that training. Or, drug overdose, the last thing they want to see is a police officer. So there are other programs like this, but most of them are in much larger cities that have much larger budgets and can fund something like this. But the goal is to work with the county, explore options regarding responses to mental health calls. We did meet with some people from Chautauqua County Mental Hygiene early on in the process, and they do have a small group of people who do respond to some of these calls, but it doesn't seem that they have enough staffing at this point. It's not a mandated thing that they have. Most of these people volunteer to be a part of this. So it's something that we need to look into further, and have community members also be involved with this, to look at what we can do, what can be funded, and where we go from here. Next slide. Officer health and well-being is a goal. We've seen in different parts of the country, even here, officers need to have access to mental health and physical health resources to increase the quality of life for Jamestown police officers. So we know it's a very stressful job. They're put in very stressful situations. Sometimes they see horrendous things that a lot of us never see. So it's important that we have more mental health resources for our officers and the lieutenants and sergeants and the chief as well, anybody who might need something like this. So it's something we definitely need to look more into. This is something, again, that maybe we can partner with some of the not-for-profits or the county mental hygiene as well. All right. The next slide. Diversity and implicit bias training. I mentioned that earlier, that we want to ensure that all Jamestown Police Department officers are trained and knowledgeable about the impacts of implicit bias and have an understanding of the communities they serve. So it's something that definitely needs to be done. There's definitely going to be a cost to this, but this is something that we're going to be working on very soon. This is one of our top goals, to get this training out there and get our officers trained here. And as I mentioned, it's something that's outside the scope of state mandated trainings, but I can see this training as something that will be mandated by the state. Maybe down the road after all the police plans, the reform and reinvention plans are submitted to the governor. I think this is something that they may say, yes, we're going to do this. And if they provide us the funding, that would be great too. Is that the last one there, Zach? Oh, look, it's the Citizens Academy. All right, that's something that we started working on already, where citizens will go to classes, learn about their policies, their procedures. Again, this is another thing that there will definitely be a cost to that with overtime for the officers teaching this course. We think this will definitely give people an insight into what goes on in the police department and their day-to-day operations, or even some of the special operations that they go through, the SWAT team, the Metro Drug Task Force. It's definitely something that we think that we can do, more or less in control, or we're in control of COVID. This is the last slide then, correct? Am I cutting out?
A little bit, yeah.
It's some sort of have an unstable connection. Okay. All right. Are there any questions from any of the other council people at this time?
I want to just make a couple statements, if I may.
Sure.
I would hope that in any type of presentation, and this is no reflection on anyone of person of color, but I hope we're not referring to that. My concern is both with the Asian community, who often do not refer to themselves as a specific color unless it's an internal joke, or, the Indian community, meaning Native American, do not also refer themselves as persons of color. So I would hope we clearly use the word minority in that capacity everywhere. The other thing is neighborhood watch. Tamu mentioned that, that neighborhood watch, this is something I've been very, in communication with both the chief and Officer Reinhardt, is neighborhood watch groups tend to form when there's an issue. And sometimes it's not only by the homeowner, it may be a person who rents. And at that point in time, they form a lot of times, and the chief and police department can attest to this, because it's always the same thing. Once that issue is addressed or solved, they tend to kind of fall off a little bit, and or those people who start the group move. That's an issue I don't feel is ever going to go away from, unfortunately, from the police department. So I really don't want them to be judged on their ability to maintain and revitalize a group when the public changes so much. Chief, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Like she stated, we do have some very active neighborhood watch groups. And even though they may not be vocal, for instance, the one on my street, we don't have too many issues. If we do, we communicate amongst ourselves. So I just don't want them to be judged on their numbers based on their ability to revive and revitalize that. And I have concerns with that, with funding, especially if that's going to be a part that they're going to be critiqued on, because Pat Monahan can address this issue as a former president as well, that, this is something that Captain Forster is going to be forced to deal with, along with, Officer Reinhardt, that, I don't see that changing with home ownership dwindling as well.
Definitely agree with that.
Can I ask a clarification question? Because Kim, with the neighborhood watches, at least in a little bit of conversations that we were having in our groups, our neighborhood watch, when you said funding, are neighborhood watches kind of like an organic thing run by the community, or does it require significant? I mean, when you talk about the police department and the neighborhood changing, are you thinking that certain parts of town may not have the neighborhood watches that they need due to changes in home ownership or something like that? Because I thought they were more
Yes.
organic to a certain.
They are and they aren't. I mean, that is very true in this day and age. And again, feel free to chime in, law enforcement. A lot of people are reluctant to quote unquote tattletale. So, unfortunately, nationally, Neighborhood Watch, and I think it started to improve under my watch and Pat's watch, that the image of the Neighborhood Watch changed, into more community-based stuff, giving back to the community. But initial Neighborhood Watch groups were referred to as narcs. You were just tattletales telling to the police. And as a council member now, that how many complaints do you file now on behalf of your constituents because they don't want their name associated with it? And I think there's a fear of retaliation in some Neighborhood Watch groups and in some areas. So yes, they may report it, but they don't necessarily want to be seen.
Gotcha.
Can I just ask that you do that last slide on transparency and communication, because that was important to the community, and I don't want us just to gloss over or not talk about transparency and communication, because when we met with the stakeholders group, those two things were key, and I don't want us just to show it on the screen and not discuss it.
It's no problem. I'll pull it back up.
To Councilmember Eklund's point, I think that's a lot of what the Jamestown Renaissance Corporation is trying to do. They're not calling it Neighborhood Watch, but they're trying to do neighborhood building by getting people to improve their frontage and street view. And by bringing people together with a common goal, I think that's the thread. When people have a common interest, they coalesce. And as the neighbors come and go, it changes the dynamics, and it can change dramatically over a short period of time. So I think you're right. I don't think it's that anyone doesn't want to have the feeling that their neighbors are looking out for them and watching, if they're not home, seeing that something's going on at their property, that they won't look out for them. But I think the point is very well taken, as far as when people have a common interest, they'll come together and work together. And that it's not always maintainable over a longer period of time. It usually seems to be goal oriented and on a fixed, everybody has a common purpose.
Can I add to that too, that over the years, I know before Neighborhood Watches, usually like Kim said, there were issues that were brought forth. There was the drug house, or there was something else. One of the things that with the newer technologies, I know up here on the north side, we have a neighborhood chat group. So there are several, there was well over 100 different people that are on that. And it isn't so much, it's a lot of, again, watching out for each other. Someone's dog is loose. There's a suspicious person in the neighborhood. There's, someone's packages are missing from the porch. Missing cats, some of them are kind of trivial, but again, someone might send a private message to a neighbor. I'm going to be out of town. Can you pick up my package? We have quite an extensive group here up on the north side. And so I guess as we move forward, maybe looking at modernizing how we do Neighborhood Watch and utilizing technology, and whether it's, utilizing messenger on a phone, on our computers and so forth. So it's not necessarily meetings and signs on the street and stuff like that, but that more use of technology, especially now with during COVID, people are more reluctant to gather, so they're using that technology. So somehow that could be added to that, so that becomes more of other groups in the community can be shown how to do that, so that they can have kind of a technological neighborhood watch, so to speak.
I want to also piggyback on what Marie said, because it made me think about partnerships and why we kind of left that open-ended. because we really don't know who needs to be sitting at the table. And so when you talk about the Renaissance Corporation, that might be a nice way to mesh with a neighborhood watch type of initiative, wherein it's not just, I mean, we have the same thing, Tony, and we do that, and we do little block parties, and we decorated a friend's, house because she was in the hospital for Christmas. And so perhaps it's a way to kind of also get the JRC and the neighborhood watch idea to kind of grow into something a little bit more comprehensive. So it's not two separate types of things, but those are the partnerships that we're trying to look at, not knowing who's sitting out there and what other people are doing. So those are some of the things we need to kind of think about, so we're not duplicating services or people's time as well. So I'm glad, Marie, you brought that up. So hopefully this will be a good thing.
All right, I apologize, Councilwoman James. I had 3 different PDFs open on my computer and I missed this completely. But yes, this definitely was very important to our committee, communication and transparency, as well as being important to the community. The goal is to increase transparency and communication throughout the Jamestown Police Department with the community. So an objective is the use of body cameras for protection of officers and community. Currently, all patrol officers are required to wear body cameras at this point in time. But we would like to see all officers wearing body cameras, including the detectives. And again, this is another issue that is going to go back to funding, because we've got a quote on it and it's quite expensive. In the current body cameras that we do have are getting a little dated and not going to be able to be repaired. So that's something we're going to have to look at. And hopefully we can find the funding for that here shortly.
That issue was brought up, can I ask, because I know in certain cases, the former chief had concerns about, especially in assault cases, domestic violence cases, that there were concerns that a victim would not speak if a camera was running, or they would not be as forthcoming if they knew they were being videotaped, or whatever you want to call it, but on one of these cameras being recorded. The other concern I would have in cases, just as was brought up already, about people who are giving information, who are afraid, is that information. So if someone wants to provide information about a drug house, an activity that's going on in their neighborhood, and they're giving a statement and they're recorded, if that person is prosecuted, can they get the recording, and then can it be used against the person who came forward and said, I'm tired of what's going on in my neighborhood, and now they get victimized because they've turned out to be now the person who was the perpetrator now goes after the victim because they told on them. I mean, I understand the use of cameras, but is there discretion in when and how it's used so that people are not afraid that they could become a victim of the criminal behavior because they came forward?
I'd like to chime in on that. Yes, there is discretion. I think there might be some verbiage in some of the policy on that. The chief could maybe chime in on that. But there are times where an officer would be talking to, say, a domestic violence victim, a sexual assault victim or whatever, and they're going to shut their cameras off, but they're going to be documenting that on reports that they were shut off and why they were shut off. There were numerous times in my career where I might be talking to an assault victim that didn't feel comfortable, a domestic violence victim, didn't feel comfortable with my camera being on. I would shut it off and I would just document why it was shut off. Obviously, in drug cases, if you're talking to an informant, a drug informant, or if there's a drug informant officer, you're not going to have a drug informant officer wearing a body camera talking to an informant for the safety, obviously, like you stated, the safety of that informant. You don't want someone getting injured. We've seen that happen in the past. So there are instances where cameras wouldn't be used. but they could be used in day-to-day operations within the detective unit. If there's detectives going out, maybe just doing a canvas of a neighborhood, maybe there was some recent break-ins of vehicles or houses, and they're just doing a canvas where they're knocking on doors and asking citizens, did you see anything? Have you seen any strange activity in your neighborhood? That would be an instance where they would be wearing a body camera, not only for the safety of the officer, for any kind of accusations that could be made against the officer or the detective, but also for the liability reasons for the city. I can think of numerous things that could go wrong with our detectives right now currently not wearing body cameras. There also has been some cases in the past that weren't real solid cases as a result of body cameras not being used. I think if body cameras were used in those instances, those cases would have been stronger in court. So to answer your question, yes, there are situations where detectives or patrol officers would not be utilizing their body cameras to protect victims.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure there was some, that this wasn't an all or nothing, that once they had the cameras, they basically had to have them on all the time, because I think, as you said, it would keep some individuals from going into detail or discussing things. So thank you for the clarification.
On the second point.
Okay, and finally, the last objective, to provide multiple avenues for two-way communication between the police department and the community. Police department has been very active with their Facebook page, posting different community outreach things that they've been doing. And there's also online forms that could be submitted to the police department. Email address, phone numbers, or clear links that they can use that information to file complaints or submit questions.
I might suggest, and we talked about this.
Any other questions?
He's cutting out.
Oh, okay. Well, and just, as we look at two-way communication, I keep saying this, but for the younger generation, the Facebook page is nice, but according to my daughter, Facebook is for old people. So Instagram and Twitter is how some of the younger generations also communicate. So it's just a matter of increasing the way communication is provided. I do like the fact that, we're seeing a lot of things on the Facebook page with regard to community statistics for the week on calls that they've made. So the policing aspect of law enforcement, as well as some of the community service aspect of law enforcement. So it's nice to see both sides, or all the areas that law enforcement is participating in the community. So just want them to encourage them to keep that up, and maybe just add Twitter and Instagram if they have some of those younger officers on there that need to show some of the old heads how to do it. That might be a good thing.
Yes, thank you for that. We mentioned TikTok as well.
Yes. I love police officer TikTok. Those are hilarious.
Really? TikTok.
So.
Any other questions or concerns?
We would just appreciate any feedback from the council or anyone else before our last meeting. I think the council is going to get the final draft of this on this week. Is that correct, team? Because we will be voting on Monday.
Then can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is everything that I'm seeing going to go into this report, so all the comments will go in as they are? Okay, then I have a question, because on page 6, it's in number 98. And I'm guessing it might have been done with a voice, but I don't know if it's about 10 lines down, but I don't think it's what was said. But I don't think that should be a quality or a tray of Subway if you get a really good candidate. So I have no idea what they said, but that was clearly, I think what they were trying to say should be a disqualification, but the line came out as a quality or tray of Subway. And I couldn't understand. 1, 2,
What page are you on, Marie?
Page 6 in the comments, it's number 98 because they're numbered. It's page 6, number 98, and it's about 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down. If you read it, they were talking about residency requirements, and then somehow it's got a quality or tray of Subway. And I'm going, what on earth is that?
98.
Marie, is that in the survey data?
I don't know.
These
Well,
are pretty
that's what
much
I'm guessing.
unedited.
Is this all going in exactly as it is here? Because it's comment number 98, I believe, is how they're recorded. It's page 6 of 47.
Okay.
It's 9 lines down. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep, Marie, that was from the survey data, the stakeholder survey that was put
Okay.
online. Those responses were typed in by individuals.
Okay.
So we captured whatever comments they provided as is.
So, but I'm wondering if it was audio, if it was an audio or no, really seriously, that's how it came out, because I'm going, it doesn't.
They may have used some type of audio feature, but that's what the survey captured through SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, that's what's pulled.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just wondered if maybe it was, in like Dragon Speak, or when you're converting, to text sometimes, or it could be that somebody started to type something incorrectly. But I was just, if that's exactly what they said or how it came across, it just didn't make any sense. And
I'm trying to figure out what they meant.
I think it had to do with disqualification, that it shouldn't be a disqualification if you get a really good candidate, but it just was nonsensical in the middle. And I just wanted clarification if somebody knew what that really meant. Okay. That was my only question, besides what I've already asked or commented on. I just wanted to know if somebody else knew what that was supposed to be. So sorry for the interruption.
No, tray of Subway is interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, they're all unedited comments there.
Yeah, maybe they were ordering lunch and it came out in the middle of it. I don't know.
So yes, I guess if you do have anything, the rest of the council to share with the committee, get it to us so that you can have the final draft. I had a timeline that I don't have in front of me right now. I think I had the final draft to the committee by Friday, or to the council by Friday or the weekend or something, so we could vote on Monday. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Or maybe Thursday to go.
Oh, maybe Thursday, maybe, yeah.
The agenda for the meeting.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. And we had also talked about, and I don't know how this is going to work, requesting members of the community who would like to be part of the next stage of this committee to now begin to start getting deeper into our goals and objectives. So I don't know how we want to do that. That hadn't been finalized yet, but we'll make sure we get something out once let's get the document submitted first, get that off our plate, and then we can request people to submit based on however we want to do that.
Absolutely. Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for everybody's help and all the work.
Should we stay on, or what are we doing? It's 4 minutes.
So isn't it a different,
Oh, is it a different link?
link?
Nope,
I don't know.
It's the same link. You'll
Same.
have
Oh, okay.
right on
Then
here.
I'm just gonna leave well enough alone. I had too much trouble getting in the BPU meeting after getting off personnel. I'm done.
Just a
I'm
quick
serious.
note.
I spent 20 minutes trying to get in and could not get into the meeting. And I could hear it. I couldn't get in. I'm going, no, I'm not checking out.
So we got 4 minutes. I just want to thank everybody, especially the Public Safety Committee. You guys did a great job. You put a lot of hours of work into this. And Zach and the administration and chief and all those that compiled all this, put it together. It's been several months in the works, and I just want to commend the Public Safety Committee of the City Council for the work at the time. Tamu and Brent and Jeff, the work you guys put in, and Vicky. I know you had an integral part of this as well. So again, thank you guys for putting all this together. This was above and beyond what the Public Safety Committee normally is given a task to do. So good job with that. And I know it's not over. There's still time to add to this and then vote on it. And then it's a work in progress from there. So,
Tony, what I want to say is what I have found just in the little meetings that we had with law enforcement, it gave me a new level of understanding of what law enforcement is like. And so I hope that people from the community engage in some of these committees that we're going to try to be putting together in these collaboratives, because and the chief and Officer Forrester were very, very helpful with helping us to understand why things are done and how things are done. And it was worthwhile. And so this was it was a long haul, but it was, I gleaned some really good information out of it. So I would recommend that those who should engage with law enforcement, because there's a lot to learn.
I just like to piggyback what Councilwoman Reinhardt said, because I think the community also gained more trust with the police department because of these interactions. Because in the beginning, there were some people, they had some very rough edges, and they still have some rough edges. But it just seems like with the way these meetings were going, and the chief and Captain Forrester, and just being available and open and being transparent to the community, I just think there's just a new gain respect for City Hall. And also for the mayor, for his openness. This process has been great for our community. And I just think, as Councilwoman Tamu, Reinhardt was saying, I think it goes for the community itself, because I just think people, they don't see City Hall as something that's not touchable. I think they know that it's something that if something happens, they can call the chief. They can call, I know even Councilman Russell, people were talking to him afterwards. And so I think they see the council and this whole process as we're all people, we're all in this together, and we can fix it together. So I don't think it seems like we kind of broke down a little bit of them against us, where they see that we are a total community. And so I really respected this process, and and I'm honored that the Public Safety Committee allowed me to be on it. And and Councilwoman Reinhardt with her whip, keeping us in line. So I just really appreciate this process. And again, I just thank everyone who.
Yeah, I think the one meeting that I went, I would agree that I was actually a bit overwhelmed to see what some people were willing to share, and longstanding history of not always having a good relationship with the police, but their openness and willingness to say that we're all in it together, as you said, and willing to change and willing to provide the mutual respect. So yeah, it was I'm glad. I wish I could have been on more, but I was really glad to have been on the one, because it was a real eye opener from the community perspective.
Very good.
I said during this whole process that, I worked there for 20 years, and there's a lot of this stuff that has been taking place and probably even more so with the new leadership of Chief Jackson and Captain Forster. The style of leadership that is there now is much different than what was there before. And I think there's always room for improvement. I was impressed that the chief was willing to step back from the beginning and say, I don't want this process to look tainted. I don't want to insert myself into this process. I'm going to be in the background. If you guys have questions, if you need anything, let me know. But he allowed us to just run with this and go through these things. I know there were some other departments that, some of the stuff was actually written by their chief of police. We didn't want any bias when this draft was made up. And I was just impressed that the chief was willing to kind of go hands off and just be in the background and say, whatever you guys need.
Okay. All right, are we ready to roll on the regular meeting? We're good?
We are.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of the Jamestown City Council work session of Monday, March 22nd to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sheldon?
Here.
James?
Here.
Karuba?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Eklund?
Here.
Graham Reinhardt?
Here.
Russell?
Here.
And President Doles.
Here, thank you. Is there any correspondence to come to the council this evening?
There is not. No.
Thank you. If there is no correspondence, we'll move on to resolutions from our committees. And our first is the Finance Committee and Councilwoman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have quite a few resolutions and some in addition I have under new business. But first we'll start with the ones that were pre-filed. First resolution is authoring the Jamestown City Council to accept the following policy for the employees of the City of Jamestown Pandemic Operations Plan. This is in accordance with the New York State Labor Law, Section 27-C, effective immediately. Any questions or comments anyone wants to add? Second resolution is authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 1 to the Smart Tourism Transportation Jamestown contract with ID Sign Systems Incorporated, 410 Atlantic Avenue, Rochester, New York, 14609, to extend the contract completion date per letter dated March 2nd, 2021, which includes the modified schedule, subject to the approval of Corporation Council as to form. Any questions or comments?
Kim, I had a question about the last one, but I was on mute, or maybe just for Eddie's staff. Just make sure you, I found I think what might have been a typo in the document. So just make sure that they revise it or read it through just one more time before they, it was on, I saw what might have been an unclear or sentence on page, now where is it? Of course I can't find the page, but just make sure you reread it. Or they reread it.
If Tamu, if you find it, just email it to them and so they can.
Yeah, it was just like a sentence had been like repeated, I thought.
Page, whatever.
It's pretty small, but just want to make sure that it's seen. Okay.
Okay. Okay, going on to the third resolution. Authorizing the mayor and Jeffrey Lehman, PE Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks, Recreation and Conservation, to purchase from Admar Supply, 1394 Military Road, Buffalo, New York, 14217, one new 2021 Kubota KX057 mini excavator for a total amount not to exceed $65,659.44, subject to the approval of the Corporation Council as to form. And I want to note that these funds are available through the DPW capital account for 2021. Any questions or comments? Okay, the fourth resolution is authorizing the mayor and Jeffrey Lehman, PE Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks, Recreation and Conservation, to purchase from Tracy Road Equipment, 68033 Manlius Center Road, East Syracuse, New York, 13057, one new 2021 Felling FT16 tilting equipment trailer for a total amount not to exceed $14,110 and no cents, subject to the approval of Corporation Council as to form. And again, this is funds approved through the DPW capital account for 2021.
Are these
Questions?
replacing?
You cut out there.
You cut out, Grant. You muted yourself too fast.
I was just asking if this was replacing any existing equipment.
No, this is actually a mini excavator. Something we've been trying to purchase or to plan to get into. Ultimately, it might wind up replacing one of the bigger units, but this is for smaller work. We borrow the BPUs quite a bit.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, number 5, resolution number 5 is authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-time amendment with the town of Busti, 125 Chautauqua Avenue, Lakewood, New York, 14750, regarding the 2019 intermunicipal assessing agreement, adjusting the payment amount for services rendered from October 1st, 2020 through September 31st, 2021 to $40,000 payable to the city of Jamestown, subject to the approval of Corporation Council as to form. Any questions or comments?
Can you tell us what that's about? Somebody, Eddie, Kim?
That's what we discussed in the, Ryan can add to it or whatever at the end. During the budget process, we have a joint assessment service with the town of Busti. And in addition, this is the continuation of that agreement for that dollar amount that we provide those services for.
If I
Thank
may
you.
just add on to that, Councilmember Eklund, we typically have an assessment agreement that is slightly higher and is part of the agreement if certain municipalities elect to opt out of that agreement, which has occurred during this COVID period. We are required to adjust the assessment fee. We are providing a one-time adjustment to the town of Busti. This is a multiple municipality fee. There's something like 8 or 9 different municipalities that all go into this. A couple of them have decided to go with a different assessment provider. So we're providing a one-time adjustment to the town of Busti to allow them to renegotiate their agreement with those municipalities or to adjust their agreements with the other municipalities.
And I'll add to that, we received about $73,000 in 2020 from this agreement, and we did budget for the reduction. So the 2021 budget is $39,000.
Thank you for that explanation.
Resolution number 6 was pulled, will be reevaluated for next month. And so we move on to resolution number 7. That is a resolution authorizing the Jamestown City Council to ratify an amendment to a grant agreement with the Chautauqua County Land Bank Corporation, PO Box 603, Fredonia, New York, 14063, in an amount not to exceed $850,000 total, for an extension of the term of the agreement for the demolition of vacant, substandard, or abandoned properties in conjunction with a grant from the state of New York, Office of the Attorney General, for a period of January 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, resolution number 8 is authorizing Mayor Eddie Sundquist to enter an agreement with the County of Chautauqua for stop DWI services beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2022, subject to the approval of Corporation Council as to form. I'm not sure if the mayor or Chief Jackson want to add anything to that.
See if the chief has anything. This is a pretty standard program that they do, but Chief Jackson?
Yeah, we normally get this grant every year. It's to provide additional patrols during certain months, certain holiday times, and that's where the majority of that money goes to.
And some of the Stop DWI funding has been used to also purchase items that we have been unable to support in our budget, i.e. vehicles and other things
Yes.
in the past as well.
Yes.
Any other further questions or comments? Resolution number 9 is suspending the hiring freeze instituted by resolution number 200-201C03 and authorizing the filling of the following position due to the essential nature of the position. 1 mechanic in the Fleet Services Division, and this is due to a vacancy, recent termination. Any questions or comments? You want to discuss the new business resolutions first before we go into the information and report?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. New business, the purchase, we have a purchase of a new, I lost it, sorry, a groomer for the Parks Department, budget in the Parks Department 200 account for this. The price came in lower than expected. This is a new piece of equipment. I didn't get the details on that, Ryan. Did you send them as an attachment?
Yeah, they should have been the attachment. The total is about $21,000, and what we budgeted was $27,000. So the price came in about $6,000 less than anticipated.
And again, this is mainly for probably for Dietrich Park, I'm assuming, Jeff?
Well, actually, we have 4 groomers, and right now none of them are running, so I can't tell you exactly. I'm guessing Dietrich Park, since it's the newest one. And the actual price is $21,120.
Okay. I see it now. Okay, and then the second resolution is a resolution to accept $3,145 from the Community Foundation for replacing and replanting spruce trees at Bergman Park. Jeff, do you want to speak to that? I know there were some issues up there that caused that, so.
We had a whole slew of dying trees that we took out, and the Community Foundation graciously stepped up and said they'd be happy to pay for those. And that would be the money for the materials, right, that you're voting on next week.
That was it under new business.
Trees. Jeff, those are the trees right behind the small field, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's it. Okay, you want to go on to the informational report?
I will let Ryan handle number 10, obviously. That's outside of mine. That's the 2021 bond authorization.
Sure. So I was hoping to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the administration is looking to have the council authorize some additional borrowing that has not already been authorized. There are some projects that we'd like to borrow for that have already been authorized, but you can see the total cost here is $2,177,558.60 that we're looking to potentially borrow. We've already been authorized to borrow $410,000 out of that in total. So we would need an additional authorization of about $1.8 million. Just to kind of summarize the projects, we'd be looking to upgrade the equipment in the access points at Cherry and Spring Street lots for about $346,000 in total. And this would actually save us the cost of the lot attendants going forward. We would not have to have lot attendants, and it would save us around $90,000 on an annual basis in payroll and Social Security and those costs. Looking at the other projects here, we have some security camera upgrades. You can see the Cherry and Spring Street upgrades are a lot more expensive than the Main Street, and that's because we would have to run some conduit at those ramps in order to put the security cameras in. We also have some elevator improvements and some street structure, some structural improvements, I'm sorry, at Spring Street. That's the big item here is the $900,000, and this is some concrete work as well as traffic coating at Spring. And I don't know, Jeff, if you wanted to add anything to those two items.
Am I even on? Yeah, I'm on. Spring Street's our oldest ramp, as you all know, probably our most heavily used ramp. It's been an ongoing fight to maintain the concrete work over there. So we've been, I think the last one was 2009. We did a major repair, and this would also include traffic coating. And everybody thinks traffic coating is no big deal, but really the traffic coating keeps the water out from getting into the steel in the pre-stressed concrete. So it's a very important component of the ramp. In the long run, 900,000 seems like a lot, but if we were to have to demolish that ramp and reconstruct it, well, let's just say I'm hoping that's after I retire. So it's got to be millions. So that's what that money is. And we are currently out to bid for this work. We've pulled the traffic coating out as a extra, so we wouldn't have to award it if we don't have to, but I'm really recommending and hoping that we do award it. The prices come in right.
Jeff, how long do you think we'll get out of it? Another 10 years? I mean, what kind of?
We should get out 10 years out of it. Where we don't usually get the life out of it is up on the roof, particularly in the Spring Street ramp, and the other two ramps, we heat them so that we don't have to plow quite as much, or hopefully at all. But it's the snow plowing that really does the liners or the layer on the top in.
Oh shit. Authorized portion of this is really the bond. I mean, I just want to make sure everybody understands this. I'm having a problem putting together my thoughts today. The authorized portion of it is a bond previously approved and voted. And the new portion is to amend that or create a whole new bond. I just want to make sure everybody understands what you're talking here.
Just to add on to it, and that's exactly what Jeff's talking about in the traffic coating is the difference there. So the 210,000 was approved in September of 2019. Yeah, and Jeff has it out to bid this month for that work plus the traffic coating. So we'd have to
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say the other thing to keep in mind was this was a COVID casualty that we had planned to do last year. So this ramp has had another year of freeze thaw and deterioration. So we're hoping we can get the prices to come in under the original budget.
I'm not exactly just picking on that line item, Ryan. I'm saying, all this access equipment and the Cherry Street that have nothing authorized. I'm talking more of, so everybody understands where this additional bonding money is coming out of what bond or.
Right. So we would have to issue an additional bond anticipation note for the 1.8 million. We have not borrowed any of this money at this point in time, but we would go out to our financial advisor and borrow 2.2 million, but we would need an additional resolution for the 1.8.
I have a question. Given that we're getting this money from the federal government, supposedly for infrastructure, would any of this that's going out to bonding qualify, such as the elevator or some of the other detail? Would any of that apply, or would any of it be reimbursable under that money coming from the federal government?
I can answer that, Marie. So there's a couple things. First and foremost, as Councilmember Eklund pointed out, there was a bond authorized under the Smart Cities Bond in 2019. Some of the funding has not been used up. So we're proposing to add on to this, which would be a new bond anticipation note. Councilmember Karuba, to your point, as of right now, we have not yet received guidance from the Treasury Department on what will or will not be reimbursable. But going off the law itself, it needs to be related to a water, sewer, broadband infrastructure project, or an economic development piece related to COVID, or a reimbursed expense for lost revenue to the city. So as of right now, it's not explicitly authorized under that federal funding.
Okay, just a thought. Thanks.
I would like some more detail. I have no issue with, obviously, the parking meter stuff. I know needs to be done. The concern I really am running into right now is the bike sharing installs and the liability and all that kind of stuff. I would like to see more detail on that line item in particular.
Sure thing. We're happy to provide that to you. We've also provided original quotes on this back in November 2nd.
Right.
We'll give additional quotes back again for you all so that you have it, especially with the bike sharing program, Councilmember Eklund. But the only thing that's been added to this from the November one is the parking meters and then the ambulance service, of which was already prior authorized.
Right. And I'm all for improving mobility across the city, but I'm also not in favor of putting the city at liability. So just want to review that.
Happy to provide additional information.
Eddie, is there anything else that's authorized that's not on this list?
Yeah, there's actually in the packet, there is a summary of all of that. So this is the original authorization of 9.4 million. You can see to date, we've borrowed 5.5 for all of the projects that were approved in September of 19. So we still have 3.9 that has been authorized and not yet issued.
A good chunk of that looks like the fleet facility, right?
Correct, yes. I also provided a couple schedules just to kind of show our current debt situation. We currently have 15.9 million in serial bonds that are outstanding. And we don't have any bond anticipation notes. And then on the fourth page here, just kind of a quick summary of our debt limit. Our debt limit is actually calculated at 7% of the average 5-year full valuation. So the debt limit would be 47.5 million. We currently only have, and this schedule does include BPU, but we currently only have 17.4 million in debt that's subject to the debt limit. So we're only at 37% of our total constitutional debt limit.
Ryan, could you let us know do you remember what the percentage rate was for interest on the bond that just got rolled up? It was something like less than 1%, I think, right now.
I don't have it in front of me, but I can follow up on that. I apologize.
The interest rates are favorably low right this moment as well.
Correct. And the way that this would work is we would issue a bond anticipation note this year, 2021. We would budget for a interest payment next year. And for this amount, we're probably looking at $25,000 to $30,000 in interest, depending on the interest rate. And we could also budget for a principal payment next year as well, if we could fit it in the budget.
Ryan, could you send this to everyone and also include if we have any bonds coming off in the time that these payments would start or anything like that, the bond schedule that you normally send periodically?
Yeah, no problem. Sure.
I think that would help. Any other questions or comments on this item under informational report?
Nope.
Okay, the second item is contract work on the Spring Street parking ramp.
That is a mistake on my part, Kim. I thought bids were coming in last Friday, and they are coming in this Friday. So as soon as I get the information, we can go through it and look at it and I'll make a recommendation to the council. Obviously, it's something we're trying to get started as soon as possible. But
So you would be looking for us to vote on it next Monday?
I may be looking for you to vote on it next Monday. I don't know. It depends on how the prices come in and
Okay.
who it is. Yeah, I apologize. There was a mistake between myself and the staff as far as when the date that they had to come in. I was hoping to have them in last Friday.
So just so everyone understands, if it's something we do vote on, it'll be under new business because the meeting notification will be filed before that.
Like I said, I'll get you the bid tabs and I don't know if I'll give you a recommendation on it by Friday, but but definitely the bid tabs so you can see what's coming down the pike.
Okay, I also am done with that, but I do have one item for executive session, potential litigation I'd like to discuss.
All right, so that's it for safety, or I should say finance, I'm sorry.
Hope so.
Let me just write this down for executive session. So you said for
Potential litigation.
okay. All right, then we'll move on to housing. I don't see any resolutions, but I see there's a report under here. Vicki, is there anything that you wanted to add to that, or is that just Crystal's?
No, we just have our item up for discussion where Crystal is going to give us an updated report on the code enforcement numbers.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to share my screen. Get the right screen here.
You're muted, Vicky, if you're trying to speak. Oh, okay.
All right.
I just wondered.
Yep, you can see it.
Okay. So this is just a year-to-date snapshot of where we are with regard to new cases, ongoing cases, caseload for enforcement officers. I don't know if there's any specific questions that anyone, housing committee or anyone from council has. Something to just kind of note, I've been doing a little investigation of other municipalities and how they're handling code enforcement while housing courts are closed and throughout the pandemic. And it struck me that a lot of municipalities similar in size to ours just stopped enforcement altogether. I thought that was really, I don't know. I applaud our enforcement officers for the kind of tedious work that they've continued to do throughout this pandemic. Without housing court, it's been really challenging. And there's kind of no end in sight as far as when courts reopen and what we'll be facing once that happens. So I just want to commend my team for the constant follow-up, the constant phone calls, the constant drive-bys, trying to get any cases closed. It's been a challenge. So I just wanted to mention that. As far as our caseload goes, we're kind of right at the average, 414 cases. Ongoing cases, 352. So that number is new cases plus cases that just continue that have not been able to be closed for one reason or another. Total inspections done since January 1st, 339 between 3 code enforcement officers. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions anyone has. Exterior maintenance continues to be the majority of our cases. I will note that this month to date, which we're not completely through the month yet, we have, let's see if I can find the right one. Since the first of the month, we've had 38 new cases. And February, we had 9 new cases. January, we had 15. So that just shows you with the melting snow and the warmer weather, our new cases have begun to skyrocket and will continue. So we're gonna be busy here for the next several months. That's all I have for an update there. I do have one other item to update if no one has questions on code enforcement. So we've been talking about the Citizen Advisory Committee. We are ready to roll that out. We'd like to open it up for applications. I know I sent the draft application to the Housing Committee Housing Committee. I don't know if there's any comments back from the Housing Committee on that, but I'd like to be able to open up applications tomorrow.
I think you go for it. And I just like, again, just to thank you and your staff, because it has been kind of difficult to do your job. Your hands are kind of tied with the housing court, not being open, and, and people wanting to see results, and you can't give them results because the courts are closed. And so I think you guys are doing an excellent job, and kudos to you all.
And I'd like to add as well, at our BPU meeting today, Dave Leathers commented that 80 individuals, through the help of Crystal's department, Stephanie, and a number of other people, 80 individuals were able to get caught up with the funds that were available on not only their heat, but their water and sewer as well. And he said that was very helpful. He was a little bit disappointed. There were people that could have taken advantage of the program and won't apply for HEAP or won't apply for any help, but the 80 families that were helped, it was huge. And really wanted to give you credit. And, it was very much appreciated at the BPU how much work and effort went into getting that rolled out, getting the applications and helping those individuals during a really tough time. So thank you to them, and give credit to those families who needed help and reached out and did what needed to be done, because it wasn't, money wasn't, you didn't just ask and have the money handed to you. There was a little bit of work on an effort on the part of the individuals getting the funds, but a credit to the staff as well during a tough time to help those people that were really having a tougher time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Kruba. I'd like to just thank Stephanie Wright for all the work that she did on that. She really was she was the one working her tail off to get that done. And working with BPU was wonderful. Heather Flowers was really great to work with. So it was a team effort.
It was duly noted today. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. I'll pass it along to Stephanie.
Crystal, one thing I do want to piggyback. I know it's very frustrating to not have housing court, but as you've noticed the past few days, unfortunately, with the snow melting, I have been inundated with complaints and things, and maybe some things that people have put up with long enough for the year that they're just, I get it, there was a pandemic, but now I want to see some results. And I know there is no court, and some people do take advantage of that, the fact that there is no court, but I do want to give credit to the citizens that do try to address, what sometimes is just picking up debris and minor fixing. And I appreciate all the work that your team does to send those letters out and to inform people that they are in violation, because people are getting ready where they just want something done on some of these places. So,
well, to talk about partnership, the Hands on Jamestown is planning I guess neighborhood cleanups, and they're planning one for every month from now till we can't do it. So more to come on that, but they're actually trying to organize. And Crystal, you could probably talk better than I can about it, because I know we're planning, there's a meeting on the 25th. And I came in partway through one of the other meetings, but there is a concerted effort to work in neighborhoods to try to do exactly what you're saying, to help other neighbors get things cleaned up, get debris out. And Crystal, maybe you could talk a little bit more about it.
Sure, it's part of our anti-blight initiatives. And we're working in partnership with the Chautauqua County Land Bank, JRC, Zion Covenant Church has a really robust and excited group of volunteers. And so we're working in partnership with BPU, with the police department, the fire department. So just really trying to make it a big partnership, but also positive event or several events. The May event will be sort of the traditional downtown hands-on event that everyone is accustomed to. The other ones will be neighborhood-based and really focused on the neighborhoods. There'll be a map that will be released shortly. So we're kind of splitting up the different events with the land bank. We'll take the lead on some and the land bank will take the lead on others. So, but yeah, it's you know, trying to really empower community members and residents of neighborhoods to come on out and, you know, we'll be there right there with you, helping you clean up your neighborhood, trying to get neighbors, helping neighbors, you know, for those who may be unable or may have, you know, issues with mobility that can't drag the larger debris items from the backyard or wherever. You know, these events are really meant to kind of help with that and start to rebuild some pride in our neighborhoods. So there will be lots more to come.
But it ties in with a lot of the initiatives, including the Neighborhood Watch idea, building communities, the JRC, streetscape projects. It's really a continuation of trying to get people working together in their neighborhoods so they also get to know who their neighbors are.
Yep.
Because it makes a huge difference in what goes on if you know who the neighbors are and who's doing the good things and who's not doing the good things. So,
yeah. And
well
I forgot to mention DPW has also been working
Yes.
with us on planning this. So
yes, and the BPU, I believe, is
And
planning
BPU,
that
yep.
kitchen as well. Yes. So hopefully it will improve some of the things that you're getting complaints about. Hopefully we can tackle some of that.
Is that it for housing then? We can move on. We'll move on.
Yes.
Okay. Public safety and Brent, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution establishing a program in the city of Jamestown for the year 2021 and authorizing leasing and permitting of public seating platforms on municipal parking spaces known as parklets. And hereby adopting the 2021 City of Jamestown Parklet Pilot Program as the official design, rules, and regulations of such parklet permit granted by the City of Jamestown for the year 2021. Well, that's a mouthful there. Parklet Pilot Program. As we know, we had one parklet last year at Haggis 4 Below on 2nd Street. We also authorized another one on 4th Street, but it was very late in the year for Labyrinth Brazil. Crystal, are there any other parklets that we know of that are going to be going into place this year?
I don't know of any in addition to those two, but as far as I know, they both intend to submit to put those back up. So I guess let's let this be the opportunity for folks to know that we are extending the Parklet Pilot Program and get your encroachment or your parklet permits in.
Will this be a year-to-year permit? So each year they'll have to reapply?
I think that that's the intention for the time being. Similar to the food truck pilot, I think that we need to evaluate and, you know, see how it's going and, kind of look at, what does the data tell us? Do we continue it? Is it worth continuing with? So I think, we'll take a look at it year to year for this year, perhaps next year, and then decide if we want to make it something that is a permanent.
I'll just add on to that, Councilmember James. So both the food truck permits and the parklet programs are pilots. So they do have to be reauthorized each time that they are up. The food truck permit, I believe, is a 3-year pilot. The parklet one is a 1-year pilot. So that'll have to continue to be authorized until such time as that is made law under the city code.
Thank you.
And in regards to the food truck program, Crystal has had a series of meetings. I think there were 3 meetings over the last couple of weeks. Do you want to just briefly talk about that, Crystal, and the input that you got there?
Sure. And we'll be putting together, we had the last of the series of meetings today. So Ellen Shadle will be working on putting together a summary of all of the input that we've received so far. I think that there's perhaps opportunity to establish a committee of stakeholders, business owners, residents, anyone who might be interested in continuing to improve the food truck program. We've had some good participation so far. And yeah, I think that, again, it's a pilot program. So we just want to continue to learn from those who are participating in it and improve it as much as we can so that it works well for everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on the parklet pilot program? If not, okay. Next resolution is the same that went through finance for entering into agreement with the County of Chautauqua for the stop DWI services. The next item we have is a new ordinance establishing small cell infrastructure in the city of Jamestown. I know that our planning commission has been working on this diligently with the Department of Development. Crystal, do you want to provide us with some background information on this?
Sure, and I'm going to lean on my colleagues, Elliot and Jeff. I actually worked on this to a certain point, and then Ellen Shadle took over for me when she took over planning duties. But yes, it's been a several month long effort to develop the small cell ordinance, taking into account everything from the legal aspect to the aesthetic aspect of what an ordinance of this kind might entail. The Planning Commission was very much involved in the process. And, if there are specific questions about it, I think maybe Elliot is prepared to answer some of those, but happy to answer whatever questions anyone might have.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that a little bit, Crystal, we've been, as far as I stepped into this project from a legal point of view, it had already been going on for a couple of months as far as planning out what small cell ordinances are. And we worked with the BPU, the DPW, the DOD, my office, Corporation Counsel to put together this ordinance into being. And, just as a background behind it, and you can tell from my staff report, 5G and small cell infrastructure is coming, whether or not, the council or the city like it or not. It is permitted by FCC guidelines and New York State guidelines. So we wanted it to come in under our terms to be both aesthetically pleasing and work for the citizens of Jamestown as far as providing them better cell coverage. In working on this ordinance, we considered several different ordinances for cities that had adopted small cell infrastructure before us. And frankly, I think they could have rushed it a little bit when they were bringing it through. That was Syracuse and Poughkeepsie. But then we looked at other models, which I think ours is based off of out of Wisconsin, as well as talked to numerous stakeholders and then brought the ordinance before the Planning Commission, where we worked on it for a couple months as far as individual sections to have the finished document that we have here, which allows the city to, regulate the small cell infrastructure that is coming in.
If I may just add on to that, Mr. Raimondo. So this is something that we've been working on since actually pre-pandemic. And it is something that we've been looking at, and the Planning Commission has been going through and vetting thoroughly with many, many different departments. One of the problems that we've seen is a lot of municipalities, as Mr. Raimondo pointed out, rushed this 5G small cell infrastructure program and passed it, took the fees, and that was it. I'm really proud of all the work that all of our departments have put in, including the BPU and our legal department, planning commission, and every other department to help ensure that if and when these small cells are deployed, that they fit in with the infrastructure, that they're not these ugly antennas that just pop up out of nowhere, that they're almost where you can't even really see them, that they're put into it. And we're excited to have that. We're excited for Jamestown to continue to be on that wave of the future, but doing so in a way that really reflects our community and ensures that we have some control over the use of that infrastructure, especially since it is going on some of our infrastructure. So I want to thank all of the departments and all the folks for it. Like I said, this was quite a process. I think at one point, some of the telecommunication companies said that we're one of the hardest ones to work with because we had so many regulations and we pushed them, but they're excited. Most of them are very excited to see this done, and it's a quality infrastructure plan, quality small cell design guide.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and everyone. There were a lot of attachments on our electronic version of our agenda today. So if you have a chance to read all of that, or please read it in the future before we vote on this.
Can I just ask one question? So the 5G will then ultimately replace any idea of putting any of these huge cell towers or the fake pine trees up, or will those still be attempted to be installed? Do you know?
That is different. I'm sorry, that is different technology.
Okay.
At the moment. I think, the eventual goal is to replace the cell towers with the 5G networks. But obviously, and, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an engineer. I know certain frequencies, what comes to mind is the EMS services and police services still function on technology that uses towers, as well as some other technology still functions on those pieces of infrastructure as well.
Well, I guess what my question was, the hope would be that then they would not be looking to install more cell towers, because at one point they were looking to put one in a residential neighborhood in my ward, and it was not well received. So I just wondered, would this then more than likely, do you think, result in people not looking to put more cell towers up, or you don't know? These are two different things. We're comparing apples and oranges here.
Yeah, it depends on the cell phone company and the technology they use. As it seems they're going to be all switching to 5G at some point, but there are still multiple cell phone companies that are not using that.
I don't think you can rule out cell towers at this point in the future.
Well, then you've answered my question. We don't know, basically.
Right. Any other questions on that? All right. Our final item for discussion is the resolution authorizing Jamestown City Council to adopt the following policy for the City of Jamestown Police Reform and Reinvention Plan, and authorize the mayor to submit the plan to the state budget director. This is what we had our meeting started at 6 o'clock today that we discussed that. Are there any other questions on that plan at this point?
Just one quick question. It says on the backup for this, no fiscal impact. I'm not so sure that's really true, and I don't know how you quantify that, but I do think if you do all these things, there is a fiscal impact somehow, somewhere. Whether it's the purchase of the body cameras, whether it's, what equipment, I don't know how you quantify it, but I think to say no fiscal impact is an improper statement.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And with the things we talked about, the training, body cams.
Yeah, I mean, there's just going to be some expense, whether it's in personnel or equipment.
It's going to be
There's no
difficult to
fiscal
put a
impact.
number on now. What do we do?
Well, you just state that the fiscal impact is undetermined. at this
To
time.
be determined, just stated that there will be financial implications to be determined. I don't know what it's going to be. Now, I don't know that you'll be able to quantify it, but
No.
I think to say there's no fiscal impact is an improper statement.
Agree.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right. That's all for public safety then.
Okay, we'll move on to Public Works, Councilman Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had the same 4 resolutions that were already discussed. Finance. We first have a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the change order number 1 to the Smart Tourism Transportation Jamestown contract with ID Sign System Inc., 410 Atlantic Avenue, Rochester, New York, to extend the contract completion date per letter dated March 2nd, 2021, which includes the modified schedule subject to the approval of the Corporation Council as to form. Anybody has a question on that? Public Works. Next, we had a resolution authorizing the mayor and Jeff Lehman, PE Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation, to purchase from Admar Supply 1394 Military Road, Buffalo, via Sourcewell cooperative bid, 1 new 2021 Kubota KX057 mini excavator for a total amount not to exceed $65,659.44. And it's subject to approval of the Corporation Council as to form. And note that the funds are available through the DPW capital account. And next, any questions on that before I move on? Okay. We have a resolution authorizing the mayor and Jeff Lehman, PE Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation, to purchase from Tracy Road Equipment, 6803 Manilis Center Road in East Syracuse, via Sourcewell cooperative bid, 1 new 2021 Felling FT16 tilting equipment trailer for a total amount not to exceed $14,110, subject to approval of the Corporation Council as to form. And I don't know if Jeff, if there's anything you wanted to add on that from the Public Works side of this. And again, the funds are coming through the DPW capital account. And then finally, we have a resolution suspending the hiring freeze instituted by the resolution number 200201 CO3 and authorizing the filling of the following position due to the essential nature of the position. That's 1 mechanic in the Fleet Services Division, and the position is vacant as a result of a recent termination. And again, all those appeared on finance. So there's no questions on that from Public Works, then that's all we had in Public Works, Mr. President.
All right. Okay, is there any other new business before I go to mayor's remarks? Seeing none. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours for remarks.
Thank you. I appreciate it, President Dulce. A couple just general comments for the council this evening. First and foremost, I'd mentioned a couple times and just wanted to let folks know again, The federal funding that we are looking at for the city, we are awaiting guidance from the federal government, from the Treasury Department, on how that funding can be spent. There are very specific restrictions that have been put into the law, but we're not quite sure how those are going to be interpreted yet. So we are waiting for that guidance, and then we will work with the council members to put together a plan. For folks that were following the law itself, the way that money is split up is half of it would be provided to the city for this year, and another half would be provided 12 months later. So we're not going to get a giant check on our doorstep right away, although that will be lovely. That's not how they're going to process that out. We're not, unfortunately, unique. Like most cities, they're all trying to figure out what to do with this funding, but we need to wait until we get some additional guidance to move forward. The second thing I wanted to let council members know about, the government and public facing employees are now eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine. We are working with some of our partners to try to put together a COVID vaccine clinic for our employees. And so once we are able to confirm that, I will let the council know more about that. But we do have many of our employees that still have not gotten the vaccine and wish to get it. They are now eligible as of late last week. And so we will try to get them vaccinated for those that would like. The third item I just want to point out is that we have met internally for the healthcare committee to discuss and learn more about what we currently have under the healthcare for all of our employees, and to start to talk about other potential recommendations. That includes a couple members from our city council. That also includes retirees and our active employees. And so I don't know if Councilmember Russell, if you wanted to make any mention there from that meeting.
I'll just say that I was invited by the mayor. So
Jeff, you're cutting out.
first meeting, I thought it went well. There's people were there. There were some questions.
I can't even see Jeff now.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Hear him and I can't see him.
I think he's cut out. So sorry to turn it to Jeff before he.
Well, at some point, I am more than willing to help out on that committee. I don't know if I missed the meeting somehow, but yeah, I'm more than willing to help out on the healthcare or health insurance. I've been doing it a lot for years.
We definitely appreciate it. We'll provide some more information as we go along for that internal committee meeting, and hopefully Jeff will join us back in a minute. It looks like he dropped off, and we'll make sure we let him back into the meeting. So I'll just continue forward with that. There was a question that was brought up at the beginning of the meeting, and I said I would mention it again. The governor has extended the suspension of in-person meetings until April 16th now. So for folks that are paying attention to that, we do have that suspension. It doesn't mean we couldn't go back to meeting in person. However, the governor's executive order does expressly provide for a suspension of the in-person meeting rules under the open meetings law till April 16th now. Okay.
Just
so whenever you all decide.
A quick comment on that. I think that I know you had talked when we met the other day about looking at some larger spaces again at City Hall, and I would like to see us move in that direction. We can work out something as we move into April. I think that I mean, the deadline just keeps getting pushed back. And I think that, we have kids going to school and we have people going to work. And I think it's time for the council to get back in person. And I think, when you see people getting kicked out of meetings and, people, this just is not a very, very conducive way to do business. I'd like to try to get back to some sort of normalcy as soon as possible. And we can sit down and work that out and still follow rules of social distancing and masking and so forth. But I think it behooves us to try to get back to in-person meetings as soon as we can.
Thank you, President Dulce. Whatever the council decides they would like to do, we'll make sure it can happen. As you'd mentioned, President Dulce, we have made some movements internally at City Hall, and that has freed up some larger conference room space that we believe could accommodate at least the council members and department heads. I'm not so sure about adding in members of the public. If that is the case, then we would need to start to look back at council chambers. But for at least that, it's similar to the BPU conference room that we were working in. That's about the same size and atmosphere. So as you all discuss amongst yourselves, you let us know what you'd like to do, and we'll make sure we can make it happen for folks. Okay. The other couple things I have is the smart meter program. So the installation of smart meters, we are looking at the next couple weeks to potentially start the installation and programming of smart meters. We unfortunately have had some quarantines in our parking department and traffic department, so it's delayed a bit of that process. But I don't know if Jeff, if you want to add anything further besides we're working our way towards that installation process.
Oh, I think you're right. We'll probably get started next week and probably take a week to get them installed and up and running, and then of course we'll be working out any details as we move forward.
Those meters will still continue to accept coins until we've rolled out a full publicity campaign for the use of any type of credit cards or smart cards. Okay. All right. And then the last two items I have, number one, unfortunately at this time, and I know many of you, we've talked about this, we don't anticipate having any type of Easter egg hunt this year. I know we're getting closer to Easter. Being able to put that together and to try to find a way to do that safely has been a little difficult. So we are kind of following in what many of our other municipalities are doing is looking to see, we're probably not going to be able to do that, at least the traditional sense. Within the Parks Department, we are discussing other potential options for an Easter egg hunt if available. If we do have anything planned, we'll let you all know immediately. But at this point, we don't believe we were able to kind of safely do that without some major modifications. And although that's the sad note, the happy note is officially on April 16th, all the parks in the city of Jamestown will be formally reopened, along with all of the bathrooms, pavilions, and everything else to enjoy in our over 500 acres of parkland. I now sound like I'm selling you a park. I apologize for that. But we're excited to have those open starting around April 16th, probably even sooner as we start to turn on the water in the various parks. We're excited. We've already seen people, especially last weekend, enjoying the parks. Can't tell you the number of kids I saw at Allen Park playing basketball or using the playground equipment. We continue to sanitize that equipment for safety purposes, but we are very excited to have those fully open this year. I know how difficult it was for many of our residents and those that enjoy our parks during COVID. With that, are there any questions about my general items?
No, just want to add to that. I want to thank the parks and everyone who participated or had any hand in Saturday's Turning the River Green. That was, besides being a beautiful day weather-wise, we hadn't had that in a couple of years, and it was a fairly good turnout. And it was just nice to have a event, even though it was, short and sweet, just to have something for people to go out and get together, and hopefully the first of many. So I just wanted to mention that.
Wonderful. I have for executive session one item for collective bargaining, one item for the sale of real property that may affect the sale price. I have two personnel matters. Mr. Armando had reminded me of a third personnel matter, and I believe Councilmember Eklund, you had a potential litigation.
Right. So I think
No action to be taken in any of those items.
I'm assuming I was asked about one, it's probably one personnel. So I'm gonna go with 5 total. So it looks like 2 personnel, collective bargaining, sale of property, and potential litigation. Okay,
There's 3 personnel items.
3
That's
personnel,
usually one.
3. So that's 6 then. Okay, we'll go with 6. All right, 3 personnel, 1 possible litigation, 1 collective bargaining update, and 1 potential sale of property.
I'll move it to go into executive session. Councilwoman Karuba.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Nelson, all in favor of executive session?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in executive session. We'll wait for you to turn off the recording.
Will do. If we could please have Mr. Armando continue to join us, Mr. Lehman, Mr. Thompson, and I believe that'll be it.
No action to be taken?
No action to be taken, correct. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, so just give me a minute.